Rod, recent press release about the amount of houses in Harlow being improved. You must be very pleased with that statistic.
Oh, absolutely. When we came into administration in 2012, it was our ambition to put housing at the top of the agenda. So, for example, we carried out a 100% stock survey for the first time in Harlow Council's history. We're able to know exactly what the standard of the properties are in the town, and they're photographed, their evidence, so that we can have a clear plan going forward for what we want to do with housing. And we've brought forward many things that we've been wanting to in terms of priorities, such as building council houses. But before we build council houses, of course, we've got to make sure that we upgrade the housing that we've currently got, and we're doing that in a number of ways.
So what that was very much, when you came in May 2012, that was very much a conscious decision. Why was that high on your priorities?
Well, I think first of all it's values. I think personally, from my own position, I firmly believe that housing is one of the great issues of our time. I think that it's something that we need to, on a national level, put to the top of the agenda. And I've said this quite publicly, that governments of the last 30 years have not done enough in housing. I always feel that we're pushing at the margins here in Harlow. We're doing exactly what we can, but we need national government to do more, and that needs to be building houses, making sure that nobody in housing, no matter what tenure they live in a poor state of housing.
The actual mechanics of housing being improved, you mentioned about the stock early on. It wasn't just who got a new kitchen, who got a new bathroom. How was that all decided?
Well, this is the beauty of being able to have a 100% stock survey. So we know exactly where in the town there's houses with poor quality kitchens, where there's houses of poor quality bathrooms with poor quality external insulation, for example. So we've been able to put in plans that address that over a 5-year initial phase, £100 million phase, 26 million going forward in the next year, and it's been staggered in a degree of those that are needing it most. And for example, we're trying to achieve the Decent Home Standard by 2015, which was a great initiative brought in by the Labour government. Sadly, Harlow Council, up until this point in time, haven't been able to do that. But with the self-financing process, which means that we're able to keep all of our rents, we're now able to make sure that every house in Harlow meets decency. And I just want to emphasise that we're actually trying to set an example for the private sector in Harlow as well. We now have council houses which are going to be decent, modern, energy efficient, but we now need the private sector to come up to the standards that we expect within this town. I don't want to see anybody in this town in poor quality housing.
What influence can you have on the private sector?
First of all, we're looking at a licensing scheme for HMOs. Also, we work very closely with registered social landlords. So I think there's a couple of areas that we can work at. But I think it's the example that we can show. When you walk around a lot of the housing estates at the moment, you can see the council houses which have had new front doors, which are keeping people safe, that are making sure that heat is not leaking out. You can see the houses that have benefited from a flagship external insulation scheme, which has totally changed the fuel poverty of certain houses. It's really, really important that we look at that. And going forward now, we're also going to be looking at some of our high-rises. We're going to be looking at 3 towers in particular, Hughes Tower, Moores and Edmonds Tower, and we're going to be making sure that those are brought up to standard in terms of their energy efficiency. So I think it's really important to tackle fuel poverty in any way you can. So we're also installing central heating, we're installing new windows, new front doors, making sure that people are paying less on their energy bills, and I think that that's coming through in the work that we're doing.
You mentioned new social housing. What's on the plan? What has been done so far, and what's going to be done for the future?
Well, like I say, we keep pushing at the margins here in Harlow. So our initial priority has to be to make sure that the current stock is right up to standard. But we have been able to bring forward council house building, which is going to start happening very shortly, of between 12 or 14 council houses. But I just want to call on government to be able to give us the ability to do more. So, for example, if we could have some way of borrowing off future rents, which would be guaranteed because you're going to fill those houses, then we'd be able to build enough houses so that we could start to address the housing needs in the town. We've got about 5,000 people on the housing needs register, and like I say, I feel like we're pushing at the margins all the time, but we need government to give us the ability to do more. It's time for a national politician to make a name for themselves and to put housing at the top of the agenda.
it's in less than 80 days' time. There's going to be another local election. You could find as Labour, you could be in opposition again. If you were, is there a danger? I guess there's a question maybe for possibly the Conservatives. Is there a danger of your plans could suddenly stop?
Well, there's always that danger, but I believe on a number of levels we've had support from the opposition, and I'm glad that we've had support in terms of the modern works. I'm concerned, though, that the opposition have been quite critical of our decision to build council houses. I don't see anything wrong with local, democratically accountable housing as an option that is affordable for people, and I think that that's what council housing delivers, and I think that council housing is very important here in this town. Another thing that we did when we came into power was to make sure that we maintain secure tenancy. So as far as I'm concerned, council housing can remain a choice for those that can have it, but I want that choice to be spread to other people so that you have people who are able to access council housing, but that's down to supply, and again that's a national government issue.
And what about rent increases? What power do you have to control rent increases?
Well, as I said before, it's self-financing, so we do have the ability to control our rent increases. We are looking at a formula rent that we're moving towards in 2015, so we've maintained that because obviously that keeps money in the pot for these house improvements. But over the longer term, we have a 30-year business plan, so whereas before we used to send our rents to national government and they then used to send us on an annual basis a repair budget, but it was never quite enough. So that's why people in the town over previous years will have felt let down by the town because they would have been promised new works and not actually got those works. Under this new self-financing regime, we collect all of our rents. We then can have a 30-year business plan. So initially we've said 5 years of making sure that all the houses are up to date. And yes, of course, we'll be able to control the rents that we set. But of course, there's the dilemma. If we set it too low, then of course we will not have as much money in the pot to redo a lot of the housing, but then if we set it too high, it's just unfair. So I'm very conscious that in future years we are looking at making sure that our rents are as affordable as they can be.
A couple more things before we finish. One is on our sister paper we get a lot of items over in Thurrock on mould and damp. Does that come across your desk at all?
Absolutely. I mean, the issue you get with Harlow is it's a new town, so a lot of the houses were built in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, and those are the types of issues that we're trying to combat with the external insulation, by making sure that windows are secure, and I take it very seriously. As a teacher during my day job, one of the issues I notice is that poor quality housing has an impact on student performance, and so there's a couple of issues that I'm really passionate about, and one of them is to try and alleviate issues like you've just mentioned. Another one is overcrowding. Students need a place to study in their homes, and I think that that's an issue that we've also been working on at Harlow Council when we've been working on downsizing policies, so how we can help people to move into smaller properties.
Is it a challenging portfolio? Do you enjoy it?
I really enjoy it. It's a passion. When I got involved in local politics, a piece of advice was to me to just get involved in one area, focus on that area, try and do your best at it. It is a challenge because of the fact that we have a huge number of people waiting for homes, and to be honest, that there is a housing crisis out there. I just want to emphasise that's not manufactured by Harlow Council, that's manufactured by 30 years of poor national housing policy, and for example the coalition government have downgraded the Ministry for Housing. I would upgrade that. I would create a Secretary of State for Housing. I think it is, as I said earlier on in the interview, one of the biggest problems we have at the moment is housing, and I feel like we are pushing at the margins, but we need the government to do more, to allow us and other authorities to do more. And I think that you could have a great mixed community of people privately renting, council renting, social housing renting, and owner-occupiers. Not one which you have at the moment, where, for example, you have a huge number of ex-council houses that are now in the private sector with landlords who own multiple ex-council houses. So I think that there is an issue. It's all down to supply, and the government have to step up to the mark.
Rod Truan, thank you very much for your time.